I'm distracted because I think I'm going to have to take my bra off.
That's fine. Yeah, I don't even try anymore.
They're just holding the bandages on.
Oh,
I removed,
yeah.
if this goes in, I'm letting everyone know I removed my nipples. And it's probably been one of the most exciting, best decisions I've ever made.
Yay.
I'm actually really happy about it. So
I'm glad that you feel that way.
And I know I'm happy about it because I keep asking, why doesn't everyone do this? So I must be happy about it.
Yeah, I think that does mean that you feel like you've made the right decision.
I still haven't told her about my nipples yet.
Oh no. Well, I mean, not oh no. It's
I don't need to.
Need to know. Yeah, why would she need to know that? But...
And if this stays in and she watches this, then she'll find out.
I know. Would she watch something like this? Like, is she?
I have no idea.
Yeah, and then I forgot your dad does follow you on TikTok now, huh?
Yes, he does.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Wow.
Which I also don't know how I feel.
Or like interested in what you do online.
I'm bringing it back to the point of this experience that we're having right now of like bringing it back to art, like you're putting, like, you're being vulnerable and you're putting yourself out there and you don't know what's going to happen to it, and like you don't know how it's going to be received and like how people are going to talk about it, or like if it's even going to be noticed at all. And like, yeah, it's like such a nerve-wracking process, like especially if you are like emotionally attached to like what you are creating, and like if you feel like it is representing you, like it is terrifying.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
the reason that we are here, we are recording episode 1 of season 2 of the Reclaiming Representation podcast. So I will tell everyone, because you are aware of what we're doing, but we might have some new people. So Reclaiming Representation is a podcast that I host, and we feature voices of artists whose identities are tokenized, marginalized, or excluded from mainstream art culture. But it's like an opportunity for us to like learn about their lives and their work, while giving them a chance to like reflect on the role of art and artists in dismantling systems of oppression. So things like misogyny, white supremacy, patriarchy, ableism, like things that kind of like make up our social structures that we kind of just like have assumed as to be like the way of life. I am really interested in like learning about like and talking about and discussing like what is the artist's role in dismantling these things, because when we think of these big systems, we think of like politicians or like corporations, and like I think generally in society, like artists and arts are just like seen as frivolous, but I don't think that's true historically. And so I kind of want to like do like a contemporary like case study of like what that looks like from the perspective of artists now living today, talking about and also like in the beginning of their careers. And so like helping to like form those conversations now to like see like where their art's gonna go. Okay. And so, but really like what it is like, it's an excuse for me to talk to artists that I admire and that whose work is honest and authentic, and give them a chance to give a voice to their experiences. And so Hailey is actually going to be interviewing me today. So Hailey Wang is our new co-producer of the Reclaiming Representation podcast. She started on actually, what pronouns do you use and would you like to use, and how would you like to be referred to?
Hailey is fine. She, her pronouns are fine. I don't care as long as it's respectful. Just keep it nice, please.
I will do my best to be respectful of your gender, as I hope everyone does for everyone. And so, but yeah, so Hailey is going to be interviewing me today, because I don't do a great job about talking to myself. And so Hailey and I actually met through TikTok, and somehow the magic of the universe brought us here together, and she's been the best producer that I've ever worked with. You're also the first producer that I've ever worked with.
The first and only.
The first and only. But yeah, now it's going to be difficult, but I'm going to step away from the interviewer's mic and be interviewed, which is very hard for me because I don't like talking. I like letting other people talk.
Yeah. So, like Carina said, I'm Hailey. I'm new co-producer of Reclaiming Representation. I feel totally unqualified to interview anyone about art. I'm pretty new to like the official art scene, and I feel like I was introduced to it in many ways like by Carina. Like I've had experiences like scattered throughout my life of meeting artists and seeing art and understanding it, but I've never taken a class, gotten a degree, certainly not like hung out with a lot of artists or known them personally. And part of what like I've enjoyed about being a mutual of yours on TikTok was seeing your art. Like that was one of the times that I was like, oh my gosh, like this person is so cool. Like I remember seeing your bug plates. Carina does like these ceramic plates. Like I don't know if you make the plates or if they're found, and then you put bugs on them, real bugs. I don't know. I'm sure we'll get there. But I don't know, just excited when you announced this podcast, and I listened to the first 2 episodes. I really liked it. And then it just kind of like took a minute. And then we started talking and kind of developed a friendship separately, like organically. And eventually you were like, hey, like I need help with the words part. And I know that you write. And so I started doing show notes, and I just got invested. Like I really enjoyed all of the artists that Carina talked to last season. I'm really excited to like meet these new people and hear what they have to say and like continue the conversation. I agree with all of Carina's points as far as like art has had different, you know, like society values arts in different ways, different societies over history and all of that. And I think that it is definitely undervalued in like American society, particularly right now, and like kind of under-recognized as well in its cultural impact, right? Like I think a lot of people like to believe that the media we consume doesn't have that much impact on us, but I don't think that's true. And I think the other thing that I'm really hopeful for as far as like participating in this podcast is also like creating like monetary value and like showing that there's like value in artists and that we need to pay artists and that we need to, you know, like that artists are bringing, so, you know, like trying to expose, I guess, people to that element of culture of like how art is developed and how these ideas are communicated and how intentional. I feel like I'm rambling a little bit. I'm a little bit nervous.
I wanted to interject in 2 places. One was like, you're my word person. You're also my history and like cultural awareness person. And then also I think part of it is not just like the monetary value for arts, because like there's like this consumption direction for arts or like this consumer direction for arts, but I also think there's like this community direction as well. And like I think the idea of like mutual aid kind of like is kind of more the direction I'm going than just like I
agree. I think what I was trying to say is that I feel like I see artists do work all the time that I think they should be compensated for and that our society doesn't value. And I think that was more the direction that I was going with my thoughts of just like
totally.
Yeah, but I totally agree. Like, I think that comes partly from mutual aid and helping each other. Well, I don't know. I don't have a thesis.
No, that was it. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So that's kind of where I'm coming from as far as my role in the podcast. And then, like, I don't know. Now I do a whole bunch of stuff. Like, I'm helping with administrative stuff. Like, I'm helping with the Patreon. I'm helping with, like, figuring out social media and scheduling and, like, all kinds of stuff. But, yeah, besides this episode, I'll probably be more of a background role, and that's fine with me. So, yeah, I did feel like one thing that was missing in season 1 was kind of Carina's presence and personality, and so I convinced her that she should interview. And so
it was totally on purpose. It was on purpose.
And so I kind of I know that you would introduce yourself like as far as like your involvement with the podcast, but I also kind of want you to introduce yourself as, you know, like an artist. And I feel like maybe we should go over your pronouns one more time as well.
Yeah. I've never really like had that question asked to me like as a host, so it would be the first time.
Well, then for the first time, Carina, what are your pronouns? How can we address you?
Yeah. So I am most comfortable with like she, they pronouns. And so like if you have issues, like if you see me and you're like, that's a woman, then I would prefer you use they pronouns. But you can use she if you're just like, you see me as me and you know who I am and what I am. And like, I definitely can like, I can do the mental math of like, you're using she just because that's easiest and most comfortable, but I know that Carina is not necessarily a woman, so like, that's fine. I honestly think the thing that freaks me out the most, or like I have the most dysphoria with, is honestly my name. Like, and we haven't talked about this yet, but like every time you use my name, I think I freak out because I think I'm in trouble almost. But we could talk about that in our next meeting. We don't have to talk about this on camera. Yeah, like I'm still like, I think that's the next thing I need to figure out, like how to deal with my name, and how I feel like that represents me.
Yeah, totally fair. I like, cool. I'm very new to interviewing. I'm gonna talk out like a little bit, and I'm just gonna trust you to edit out like some of my awkwardness. Just please don't let me look like
I've had a lot of practice. I've edited out a whole season of my awkwardness, and like it's so interesting being on the other end, because like 2 years ago when I first started recording, like I was where you are, like I was so nervous, and I was just realizing that I was autistic and had ADHD, and so I still hadn't figured out like my ADHD med situation. I hadn't figured out like upping my anxiety meds a whole lot since then, and so like, and I'd never done it before, and so yeah, it was super nerve-wracking and I was totally uncomfortable, and so now I hope you can tell I'm slightly more comfortable.
Yeah, definitely. I think also I'm just more awkward. Like I'm not feeling like nervous necessarily, but I just feel awkward in like transitions. I'm just like, okay.
Yeah, I still don't. I had no idea how to. I'm glad that like you're experiencing what I felt, so I don't feel crazy, because like I hated the part of transition. I was like, okay. And like I was just like, I can't even think about it, because if I think about it, I'm gonna freak out. I'm just gonna move on and process it later as I'm editing, and ignore like putting off editing for a year. I'll just do that.
Yeah, and I think for me, I'm like, okay, like the beginning of my outline is the part that needs the most work, like full stop, because it's just like all of these kind of like catch-all, like very much like there is one answer, and then it's, anyway, you'll see. So like as far as okay, so first of all, do you think it's like appropriate to ask artists for kind of like an elevator pitch? Like I didn't know how else to like write it in my interview or in my notes, right? But like kind of like this, just like an introduction as to like who you are as an artist and like the kinds of art that you do.
Most of the artists that I talked to already had that down, and I think should have that down.
Yeah,
I still struggle
like
with it.
Pretty normal thing.
I'm gonna figure it out as I do it, but yeah.
Okay, cool. Yeah, so yeah. I think that's a good place to start, and that's where we started a lot in season 1, was just kind of like an elevator pitch of who you are and how you identify and what your art is like.
Yeah. Okay. So my name is Carina. I am and I think we're going to figure out that the reason I started a whole podcast to ask people these questions, because I didn't know the answer to these questions myself. And so as I answer these questions, I'll be coming up with answers on the spot, because I don't know. We'll see what happens. But I am a visual artist. And I'm still trying to figure out the right label, because I kind of feel like I feel like my life is a work of art, almost. Like I feel like the art that I make is not just about the product that I'm making, but it's more in like, I'm like a relationship artist. Like I really think about it in terms of like the relationship I have with the audience, and like the moments and gallery openings. I feel like that is the art that I'm making, more so than just the pieces. Like, so I started working with hair my like senior year of college back in 2015, and like that was the thing that like I haven't stopped doing yet. I feel like there's a lot of ways to do this and a lot of ways to explore it, and like I think it really highlights my technical skills, but also it gives me a chance to like shock people and surprise people, and that's the thing that I love. Like I love creating emotional reactions in people, and I feel like that is the art that I'm interested in, and it's less about the work that I make. So I do hair drawings, but I also, a lot of my work revolves around using like found materials and like repurposing materials. So like you mentioned in the beginning, like, so I don't make the ceramic plates, I find them at like thrift stores or like estate sales, or people will give me interesting plates. And that's also like a lot of my work is about like that process. It's like, it's all about like the behind the scenes part, like, oh, it's like I found this place here, and then I like asked all these different people for their hair, and then I make this thing that looks real, but it's just like it looks like a fly on a plate, but it's not. It's paint and hair and resin, and I don't know. Like I feel like that process, like it becomes like tangible almost and interesting. Like, and I feel like that is a part of my work that I am most interested in. And like I do other things, but like that is what I feel like is the work that, like, I'm like behind me, I'm like doing a painting of my cat, but I don't see myself as a painter. Like I feel more like a builder or like an assembler. Yeah, but painting is a very useful tool to being able to create something that looks like something else.
Yeah, and there's also like this element of like, when you're talking about being a builder or creator, like in your art, I noticed this like meticulousness, like this attention to detail that I feel like is also kind of this through line.
Yeah, and I think what I'm doing is like I'm highlighting, I think I did this very intentionally, but not aware of it. Like I really want to like highlight the things that I'm really skilled at that, like, again, seems shocking. So like I have very great hand-eye coordination. I have a lot of patience, and like can hyper focus, and can just like spend a lot of time doing really like meticulous tasks. And so, which is another reason why I really love Excel. And so like career-wise, I'm like a data analyst and data visualizer. So that's also a part of me. And I also feel like kind of it's like a part of my art, because I'm using like data and research to like convey something to people and like create an emotional reaction in people. And so I also feel like my social media has been a part of my art too, because like I've always had this relationship with social media where like I never wanted to just like put on this certain face, right? Like, and I also think that this is all connected to the fact that I have autism and ADHD, and it always has been. I just like, again, was never aware of it until I realized that I was autistic right around the time I started this podcast. And so like I've always used social media as a way to like be very like transparent and open and honest and vulnerable. And I think people seem really interested in that. I think some people aren't, and I don't think about those people, and I let them remove themselves and I don't worry about them. But the people that are interested in, like, I want to make people feel comfortable with like the embarrassing parts of themselves or the vulnerable or different parts of themselves. And so I feel like I've used social media, and like I've always loved just taking really like weird, strange pictures and then pairing it up with something or just showing the picture of it. So like, yeah, like that's how I've always loved using social media. So like I've had other people say like, oh, that like I didn't think of it as part of my art, but I was in this like critique group and someone had mentioned that, and I was like, yeah, you're right, I guess it is. Like I also feel like it's that same feeling of like what I'm trying to create in a gallery space, like I'm also trying to do with social media. It just takes less time than like working with hair, which is nice, and it doesn't have to be as detailed and meticulous. Like it's like my sketching kind of like that's like my sketch for like, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, in your TikTok content, what I notice is usually you actually like processing through a lot of ideas. Like I view your channel and like the draw of your channel as like less of you being like this forceful personality who is telling people things, and more you being someone who's saying, this is what I'm going through, and then asking people questions, both to get context for your own experiences and also to make them think about their views, their experiences.
Yeah, and to like connect with other people, like and I wasn't even thinking of my TikTok. I was thinking of my Instagram. Like I don't even think about my TikTok as part of my art. Like that is a part of just me. Like that is like it's not even connected to my personality or whatever as an artist, but it is me, and I do think that is still a part of me. And yeah, that is what I'm also doing. Yeah.
Yeah, and the other thing that I'm finding interesting, like while you're talking about your art, and what I found interesting while I was reading through your pre-interview was, as an autistic person, even though you never explicitly say masking, I feel like it's such a universal autistic experience to like feel like people aren't seeing what you really are. And I feel like when I was reading about the way you talk about your art, it was just this insistence of what you're seeing may be more complicated than what you're seeing, you know, like don't take everything at face value. Don't take people, don't take ideas, right?
Yeah. Those couple of videos I made on my TikTok about art specifically, I think is when I realized that like so much of my art, I think, comes from my experience of being autistic and like wanting people to look twice at things and wanting people to like not take things at face value and like being more open to like weirdness or differentness and like being open to that experience and like being open to new opportunities because of that, I think.
Yeah, well, and being open to the way that you as an autistic person are experiencing things that they're not, right? Like trying to give them an experience. It's, I don't know, I could probably, I could hypothesize forever.
Well, maybe later you can, it'll help me with my artist statements.
We'll see how we go, yeah, but what are you currently working on? I know you briefly turned aside for the cat painting.
That isn't even a cat. Like, I don't even feel like that's art. Like that's just like.
I feel like that's almost like you just like, I don't, like you said earlier, like almost sketching. Like it's definitely like creative, but it's not like.
Yeah, like
you know,
like, and this is how I feel about art. Like I have this feeling of like art is not like just because you make something doesn't make it art. Like I don't know, and I guess it's like I'm not a spiritual person, but like a lot of the ways I think of things, I feel like other people would call spiritual or whatever. But like, and that probably comes from like my background of like religious trauma. But like I don't know, like I feel like art exists in this like spirit world of just like like it's this like I don't know, like I don't have the words for it yet. As my word person, do you have the words for what I'm trying to say? That's okay.
I don't. This is an experience. I haven't done this one before, but that's okay.
like I don't like which is why I feel like craft often doesn't get seen as art, but like I feel like in many cases, like craft has that more than like generic art does that I don't know. I don't have the words yet. Maybe one day I'll be able to say this. But what I'm currently working on, so I'm hosting season 2 of this podcast. I feel like it is a part of me as an artist. And then and this is where it's like, where's the line between like art and work? Like, do I need to talk about what I'm doing career-wise? Like, I'm trying to like go back into the like work world again. And it's like I'm in this like in between of like, is it going to happen? Is it not going to happen? And like, how is it going to impact my ability to create? And like, I will be creating, but I don't think it will be art. But I do feel like the spreadsheets I make and like the graphs I make, I do feel like that is that spirit of art that doesn't get seen as art, but I think, yeah, and so that's potentially going to be part of what my work is going to be, maybe. And then I'm also working on like, so I just moved my studio from a separate space into the house, and I've used it exponentially more than I had in the last like 3 years or whatever that we've been here. And so I'm working on like being in my studio again and actually working consistently. And so I'm like reteaching myself how to paint, because I kind of have just been winging it this whole time. And so I made all these color wheels. I'm like actually painting something. This painting was from like an oil painting class that I took a couple of years ago. It was like my first oil painting I'd ever done. And so I think that is part of it. I'm like building my skills. I've been in like a hibernation, like training mode for the last like 2 years. And now I'm like ready to like start running the marathons or whatever. Like, and so I'm also working on, I did a couple of new hair drawings. So I started this series a couple of years ago. And like I made one piece while I was in college, and I was like, I have like a list of like all these things that I want to do, like, and it's like I actually have the time to do them. And so I'm like, that's where my work is now, actually doing the things that like I said that I one day can do. So I did like these 2 drawings. So it's part of this like shedding series that I'd done. And then I'm also like trying to do more photography. So this one was a photograph of my close friend who I was at her birth. And so I photographed like her pregnancy photos and her birth. And so like, I don't know, like I had never seen myself as a photographer, just because like, again, I don't understand it. I don't know the rules. I don't feel like I know what I'm doing, but like, I also think I have an interesting eye. And I also think like, I really enjoy the process of like communicating with, I get it. It's like, it's the way I do art. It's like talking to people beforehand and like, having a conversation to figure out like what are their goals, what do they want, and trying to like represent that in those photos. And I kind of want to do more of that. And then I'm also working on a couple more like hair drawings where I started a series on wood. And so I'm like continuing that. I want to try to maybe get a kiln and like do more porcelain casting. Like I have a whole list, like a giant list of things that like, oh, I don't want to give away my trade secrets, but I have another thing that involves like a model making technique, but I'm going to use it with hair, and like I'm super excited. So, am I frozen?
You did freeze briefly. I got to like there's going to be a piece that has something to do with wood and hair. You are still frozen a little bit. Let me. I could definitely hear you for a while. Oops.
Okay.
Okay, you're back. Hello. When did you start to see yourself as an artist?
It definitely was not when I took an art class for the first time in high school and then decided to major in art in college, just because I liked it so much, probably because it like really appealed to my like ADHD autistic side, because I could just like mask as an artist. It's like, I'm not weird because I'm autistic, I'm weird because I'm an artist. And it wasn't like it wasn't even like when I graduated with an art degree, like I didn't really I didn't believe in myself, I guess. Like I was just like, I'm doing this, but like everyone's gonna know I'm a fraud. I think it was like after I graduated and like I was like showing it, like it wasn't even as I was showing shows, right? Like I was like, well, no, I'm only doing this because my friend like set it all up. Like if it wasn't for her, I wouldn't actually be doing anything. I'm not an artist. But like I think her belief in me like really helped me to like actually see myself as an artist. Like I truly felt, so I'm talking about Hailey. And so we were like college roommates. And so I really felt like she believed in me, and I think that helped me to believe in myself. And so it was like probably like after graduating from college and I was still working on art that I was like, okay, I guess I'm an artist. And then I really felt it like in the process of like making this podcast, where I don't know, like I was just thinking so much about like what even is an artist. And like, I think it was a moment that I decided that I was like, okay, I am an artist. Like, it's not like, it was like a decision. It was partially like, I'm deciding to do this, but also it's like, that's just who I am. Like, it was kind of like me claiming my autistic identity, me claiming my queer identity, me claiming like my non-binary identity, that I was also like, I'm claiming my autistic identity. Like, no one's going to tell me that I'm an artist. Like, they have, and it doesn't change my mind. Like, I have to see it and believe it and claim it. And so I did. So yeah, it was not that long ago that I realized that I was an artist.
Yeah, and like one thing I've noticed in your answer and in like the answer of most of the artists that you talk to is that a lot of people kind of don't seem to feel real like until they go to college or until they like get a first art showing. And I'm curious about that. I'm curious how you feel about that. I'm curious about why.
It's the same reason. I'm going to connect everything to autism because autism was my special interest, and so it was just going to happen. It's the same reason that autistic people feel like they can't claim that they're autistic until they get an official diagnosis. Like, I don't know. It's like, it's just like this feeling of being a fraud, and it's like, I'm afraid that I'm going to claim it and someone's going to be like, no, you're not. And so I don't know, I feel like it's really similar to that, because I don't actually think going to college is what makes people decide, but it like gives them permission to actually decide for themselves. Like, because a lot of people, like, I graduated, but I still like, it didn't actually change anything until I made the decision.
Yeah. Yeah, and I totally, that I think that's just kind of what I kind of wanted to explain.
Yeah.
I just wanted to make you say it out loud, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
I feel like if there are any non-artists listening, me too. I don't know what a lot of things say. I also briefly, like, I feel like we should define masking. Should we define masking? Are we being too inside baseball? Do the autistic know what the hell we're talking about?
I feel like if they're on TikTok, I'm sure that they've maybe come across it, but not everyone's on TikTok. I wasn't. Yeah, like, so like masking is a human thing. And a lot of people who feel, a lot of marginalized people feel like they have to hide parts of themselves in order to survive socially or sometimes physically. And so masking is like the process of like hiding, or camouflaging is also a part of it, of like assimilating into something that isn't an actual like representation of yourself in order to be safe. It's often a trauma response. And for autistic people, like, we are masking everything about ourselves because autism like affects everything about us, the way we process sensory and social input, how we process our thoughts, how we communicate. But like, yeah, so like I was masking my gender, I was masking my sexuality, I was masking my autism, I was masking my ADHD, and often I was masking it with other things. So like I was masking my gender with femininity, I was masking my autism and ADHD with anxiety. So I was like, people just thought I was anxious or depressed, which I was, but it hid the autism and ADHD. And so,
but there was more underneath, and if somebody had just looked closer and paid attention to the details, maybe. Yeah. So the next question I want to ask you is about kind of like what series or works best represent you as an artist, and I feel like we've already kind of briefly touched on the hair, and I feel like we're going to talk more about hair. I want to know more about hair, like what draws you to hair.
Yeah.
What do you think hair? Why do you think?
Yeah. Okay, so how did I get there? It's back to autism, like everything else. Like I've always had an uncomfortable, and gender and sexuality, because I've always had a comfortable relationship with my hair. And because probably I was non-binary and I was gay and I was trying to fit myself into a straight woman box, and I didn't fit, and I didn't know why I didn't fit. And so I also like didn't know how to communicate with hairstylists, and like it was just so stressful, and so I never did it. And so I asked my friend who actually did the music for the show. I asked her to cut my hair, and I told her what I wanted, and she is so like my artist friends are so talented. And so I was just like, scissors here. I bought some hair cutting scissors. I'm going to show you this video. I'm going to tell you what I want and then make it happen. And she did. So I saved my hair. And I have always saved, this is another autistic thing. I have always saved collections of weird things. Childhood, it was rocks. And then there was a time where it was like fingernail clippings. And then I read in a book in like middle school that like someone saved their hair from a haircut and like released it into the wind to give to birds to make a bird's nest. But I never did that part because I wasn't sure like what was the right season to do it. Where's the right place to put it? So I had this pile of hair on top of a cabinet next to my shower for years. And then when I cut my hair, I saved the little ponytails and I was like, I'm going to do something artistic with this. And I didn't know what. And then my senior year, I needed to do something like big for my senior show. And so I don't know where the idea came from. I was just like trying to like, I was again, experimenting all throughout college to figure out like, what is my thing? And so like, I just like, my teacher was really great. And she was like, you seem to like make your space. And so I had my space. I had my chair, I had my table, it was against the wall. I had all my sketches pinned up so I could see them, which is helpful when you have ADHD. Yeah. And the consistency is helpful when you have autism. And so I was like doing all these sketches because I hate sketching, but I was like, I need to just do it because I have aphantasia and I can't imagine things in my mind. I have to make them and see them and then I could process them. And so, but I hate waste. And so it's like, I feel guilty about wasting all these things. I needed so much therapy. So much of like my art process has gone side by side with my therapy. And I think this is true for a lot of artists because it is a part of us and we need therapy. So our art is like a part of that relationship. And so I wanted to do like a simple line drawing, but I didn't want it to be simple. So I did it out of hair and I really liked that process. And I liked that it like, I was already dealing with these feelings of gender and vulnerability and intimacy and shame. And because like hair is this thing that's like, it is a part of all of the good things and the bad things. Like we are okay with head hair, but like uncomfortable about other parts of our body hair. And it was around that time that I like stopped shaving my armpits and just stopped shaving. And like it took me years to finally be comfortable with that. And so I liked that it was just like, it triggered something like very human of this feeling of disgust, but also like awe and amazement that like someone could make something like that. And so it was very human, but also like not human because it's like this like dead byproduct of our bodies, like, but it's like it's like symbolic. And so that's kind of like, I don't know, I felt like there's so much there to explore. So that's when I started working with hair.
Yeah. And the other thing that I haven't heard you talk about quite yet that I noticed with the hair, like with the shedding series, is kind of this theme of kind of disrobing or like the hair falling away, right? Like the baby coming out, the shoes coming off. Like, is there also something there as far as like stepping into an identity or like losing identities that didn't work for you anymore?
Yeah, like, I don't know, like I feel like the meaning in work always is an afterthought for me. Like I will make something and then I'll be like, oh, that's what that means. Like it's very similar to how I feel about dreams, where it's like, I'll have a dream. We talked about this morning. Like I have a dream and then it's like, okay, what was that about? Maybe it was this. And then like I can kind of explore it further once I kind of like, I like it introduces itself to me kind of. And so like the shedding series started with this piece of me just like taking my shirt off, and it was like part of me feeling comfortable with my body hair, feeling comfortable with my body. And so I was like, I don't know, like there's so much, like hair is part of aging, hair is part of with the pregnancy one is like I did it with my friend's hair that she lost postpartum. Like yeah, like I feel like there's so many connections there, but it's never like I have this one, like I do really struggle with conceptual art. Like, I want to be a conceptual artist, but like, I can't have the concept and then make something to make someone think it is concept. It always is an afterthought. Like, I have to make the thing and then the concept appears.
Totally valid. Well, and like the way you're talking too about like this connection to therapy, it also sounds like you use art to help yourself discover these ideas, right? Versus somebody who's using it to communicate what they already know about an idea. And like, those are both valuable, but they're just coming from fundamentally different places, you know?
Yeah.
Which, yeah.
Because once I have the idea, I'll be bored of it. Like, it's like, I already had the idea. I don't need to make art to communicate it because it's like,
it feels obvious to you as soon as you understand it. You're like, I'm good. I don't need to and it's, which is funny to me because I'm the opposite, right? Like, I want to chew on it and chew on it and chew on it for 1,000 years until I feel like I completely understand it, and then I want to like make something to explain to other people how I feel about it.
Which is similar to my TikTok, where it's like, as I'm communicating these things, I'm figuring things out, versus like, I have an idea and now I'm going to communicate. I can never do that.
Yeah. And like, okay, so yeah, so I mean, like, speaking of other artists, what is your art community like?
Yeah, that's also a hard thing when I think about me being autistic. But I think, so I am very social. Like, I am an extrovert, and I really do like making connections with people, but I have a lot of insecurity, and I have a lot of examples of where I have messed up, and those memories haunt me to this day. And do I want to talk about them now? I don't know. But yeah, so my art community really consists of like even though like I don't really talk to her anymore, like my high school art teacher like changed my life and set me down this path. And I think it's because like, she probably isn't, I think she's mentioned having ADHD, like she's neurodivergent, and like really set the example of like being accepting of neurodivergence, even though I don't think she was actually explicitly saying that, like her actions were saying that. And I think that helped me to be more comfortable with myself and like see the role that arts can play in my life and in my work. And so like she was a very important part in that process. And so I feel like that's more of like a historical community. Like she's not part of my current active community. And then in college, like my friend Hailey was so important in my process of accepting myself as an artist and finding my like artistic voice. And like she was the one who always like found the shows, like that was so important into like getting me to where I am now. And so like she's still there, but like she's living in France. Like we're not like it's a very distant part of my community, but it's still there. And then this podcast has kind of been a way to like expand that community and make connections with more. I just love connecting with other artists. So like part of it for me is like just like I did it recently. It's just like if I meet someone and like somewhere where I mention like we're artists, like I always go to like following them on Instagram. And I don't know what I'm going to do when Instagram like finally crumbles because I don't know how I'm going to maintain those connections. Like someone recently like was like, oh, like you want to exchange numbers or email addresses or something, and I'm like, I will have too much anxiety. I will not. It's too much of a commitment. Like it's too intimate. Like if you had an Instagram, I would have followed you, but like I can't do that. I'm sorry. I know my boundaries. And so I didn't even exchange information. It was just like, we met this one moment, goodbye, maybe we'll see each other again.
Just happening.
Yeah. And I like, yeah. And I'll probably remember that forever just because it's like, yeah. And so another big part of my artist community has been Art Pace. So like I started working there my senior year in college, and I'm still like occasionally working events or things as like a contract person. And so I love it so much because I felt so awkward going to openings there as just like a community member. But like being able to be paid to be there. So like, again, it's great for me being autistic. Like I have a role, I have a purpose, I'm supposed to be here and I'm supposed to be talking to people. So it taught me so much about communicating with people and communicating with strangers and communicating with people about art, and like, it helped me so much. And so like I feel like that has been a big part of like my community as well.
Yeah. And I think one thing you touched on when you filled out the questions that I think is an important element of the story is to talk about how like those relationships and stuff, like there was kind of this transition after you graduated college, because I think that's a really normal thing of being like, I kind of have difficulty maintaining these relationships because now I have to get a quote unquote like real job to pay my bills. And this is kind of like earlier where I was talking about like the value of like artistic labor, and kind of what I was trying to get at with compensation is that I feel like artists are expected to work for free for a really long time, and sometimes forever, just to get exposure or whatever. And I think that that is like unjust.
Yeah. And it's like we want to create, and it's like people can take advantage of that. Like,
yeah, and it is hard for me, right? Because it's like I totally understand that, like, especially in certain mediums, like you have to make something to show people, right? Like that's not the kind of thing I'm talking about necessarily, but it's just like I see people gain success, right? You know, or what from an outsider's perspective looks like success. You're being featured in galleries, museums, whatever, but like none of those places are actually paying you, even though they're collecting admissions for people to come and look at your art and understand your art and maybe talk to you.
This was something that you didn't realize. I think we talked about it at one point, but like when you like sell work in a gallery, it's like gallery owners will get like a 30%, sometimes 50% commission from your work. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And so stuff like that is all like I'm very new to like this whole conversation, but it just really stands out to me.
Yeah.
How much I hear capitalism kind of becoming an obstacle for people in having community to make art, you know?
Yeah, and like how privilege kind of like shows itself within artists and with the art community, and who gets to be successful and who doesn't, who gets to make art and who doesn't, and like what that art can look like versus like, because like comparing my situation being me and my other artist friend, it's like she got to like, she knew she was going to be an artist from like day one, and I didn't know. And I always thought I was going to graduate with an art degree, do another job, and like that was like a fun part of my life, but like bye-bye, I don't know. And so like she moved to Paris, and she like I don't know, like she got to live her life as an artist, and it was always a struggle because it was like she'd always try to contact me and I always would be working, and it just like it was hard to maintain that relationship. And then now I feel like she's gotten a job since then, so now she's working and I'm not working, and it's like flipped now. And so like it's just so interesting. And so because it's like I really wanted to like pay off my student loans and like work on my career. Because at the time it's like I wasn't an artist, like I just studied art in college. And so and then now that I've done that, and
so like with building your community by like working at Art Pace and doing these in-person gallery openings, how did the pandemic affect that, and like how did you cope with the changes that were inevitable there?
It's interesting because the pandemic happened. The pandemic happened as I was like having to leave like a really important job for me, and as I was figuring out I was autistic, and so I kind of like had to step back from everything and like process from like years of burnout over the last couple of years. And so if anything, I feel like the pandemic like allowed me to connect with more people differently, because I like had more time to like work on the podcast, and it also affected me because a lot of the times I would meet people like passively was at openings, but those weren't happening anymore. So I had to like kind of go back and focus on the connections that I had already made. And so I think that was kind of like the difference. and it also meant like people were more available, like those connections I had made, they were more available, and interacting with people virtually was more of an option. And so I think that kind of helped create like this podcast, that situation.
Yeah, I've noticed just kind of this interesting trend when I hear neurodivergent people talk about quarantine, quote unquote, right, in the US, or like the pandemic and all of the changes that came along with social distancing, is that I feel like some people, you know, like obviously it's been an immense tragedy and like loss of human life, and I wish it hadn't happened. And it seems like it's also given a certain demographic of people an opportunity to kind of explore themselves without shame of, because I know even I was diagnosed autistic a couple years before the pandemic, and I've gotten a little farther along in like unmasking and like figuring out my social boundaries and stuff. And I think even I didn't realize how much I really put into being present physically for other people and at events and all this other stuff, and having myself be passively accommodated by the pandemic. And by that, I mean, yeah, like being able to do Zoom calls rather than having to get up and leave the house, and being able to control when I eat and when I sleep and not have to worry about taking my court-ordered 15-minute break or whatever. Like,
and having other people who might not be autistic also having that experience and having that common ground of being able to talk about something as well.
Yeah. And like specifically, I worked a lot of customer service. So I think I also had the opportunity, kind of like you touched on, of recovering from a burnout that I'd been in a long time, because I had been overextending myself socially for a long time. Mm-hmm. And it's really hard to create when you're in that headspace.
For sure. Mm-hmm.
So where do you see your art going in the future? What are your hopes for your art in the future? I know you said that you're kind of like in this, like, it's a whole new world. Like, I just feel like you're rediscovering your identity there, but.
Yeah. So I know for sure, like, I kind of want, especially like now that I know what it's like to like not have to be tied to a job, which potentially will go away. I kind of want to apply for residencies. Like, I like kind of want to, I don't know, like, I kind of want to, also like the main gallery that I've been showing, like, is no longer exists. So it's like, I need to start like creating more relationships with galleries. Like, I don't know, like I also like really want to do more commissions. Like, I want to just like, this is the thing, like I realize like I just want someone to assign me a work to make for them, and then I make what they want. Like, the idea of like making something for a show, like that's something that's motivated me this whole time. But then it's like no one buys my work, and then I bring it all back to my house, I hang it up, and I become attached to it, and I don't want anyone else to have it. And so if I can make something for someone, then I don't have to like worry about that. I don't have to become attached to it. I know that so I want to do more commissions. I want to maybe do more residencies. I want to establish more relationships with people who can get my work out. Yeah.
Well, we've done a little bit more work of like figuring out exactly like how we want the format to be and like what order to ask questions. And so there's kind of like this part one of like getting to know the artist, and then there's this part two where we do try to talk more about social issues.
Yeah.
So this is me very, very bluntly transitioning into that now, which is, what do you think it means to be an artist? Like, what does it mean? I know that this is the question that like I have no idea what you're gonna say, because I know that you are still figuring it out. Like I kind of feel maybe you feel so.
Well, I kind of feel like I've already tried to figure out the answer earlier on in this interview, where I was just like, the feeling, the bleh.
Oh, the bleh.
The bleh.
The Italian hand.
I feel like it is a part of a person's way of processing. Okay, this is something I found through the podcast. I have noticed that, and again, this is where autism comes in. Like, I've noticed a lot of artists are also autistic. And many don't know that they're autistic. I didn't know that I was autistic. And so it's like, am I just saying, like, is this thing like the way I view the world as an autistic person?
Well,
I don't know.
You can never, okay, so here's something that I'm doing with my therapist right now, is you can literally never. You are always at all times autistic and ADHD and so every single experience, every single thought and concept you have is, of course, is impacted by that because it is who you are, like, fundamentally. And so, like, yeah, like, of course, people are going to have different opinions on this no matter what forever because they're having fundamentally different experiences, like life experiences, than you are. Mm-hmm. And they're interacting with art in a different way. Like, I don't think that this is the kind of thing where there is a answer. It's more like, what's your answer?
As an autistic person, I don't like that.
Like,
I want to know the answer. And I feel like I have to come up with the answer. I'm being asked, so I need to have the answer.
And as a different autistic person, I love things with no answer because it means I can look at it forever and I never have to put it down.
I want to put it down. I want to put it down, put it in a box, and file it away. And yeah, that's the other thing too. It's like everyone is different. So yeah. So my answer. What is my answer? Yeah, I feel like for me, it's like what I said earlier. I feel like art is less about the product and it's more about the experience. And it's like about the relationship between the artist and the artwork and the audience. That is my final answer.
Yeah, and I think also, yeah, I just want to briefly, I also want to read a little bit of what you said, which was, I'm less interested in art as a commodity or a product, but rather as a communication and connection, which I think is also something that seems to define the way that you move as an artist, is that like you use your art to communicate and to connect, which of course leads back to autism because we use our special interests to help people understand our experiences.
Yeah, but I only feel that way because I'm autistic, and a non-autistic artist would view art differently.
Yeah. And so, like, is activism inherent to being an artist then? And I'm really interested, again, in your answer, because I understand that, like, generally, of course, that's going to vary person to person. But I mean, the way that you experience art and talk about art and, like, your autism is so fundamental. There's no wrong way to answer the question. I'm not worried about it.
Yeah, I am.
I know.
Okay. Man, and it's difficult because we ask the hard questions at the end where, like, my brain's already like, I'm done.
Do you want to, how about we just, like, skip to another question? We maybe come back to it. We'll see how it goes. Okay. Because maybe when we come back to it, you'll be like, oh yeah, we did answer that.
Yeah.
So the next one is, how do you financially support yourself? And in what ways, if any, are you able to subvert capitalism?
And, like, this is a case study on art and privilege. Like, what does my relationship between art and privilege look like? Because I didn't work full-time as an artist for the first, like, 3-4 years after graduating. I worked full-time for other people in, like, jobs. And I supported myself that way. I was able to pay off all of my loans because I knew that if I had loans, it would be on my mind forever. I'd feel weighed down. It would prevent me from, like, making decisions. And so I was like, my goal is to get rid of that so I don't have to factor that into any decisions. And so that was my whole financial, like, all my decisions were focused around that. And I was able to do that. And so now I have not worked for, like, I don't know, 1 year, 2 years, I don't know time anymore. And so my partner's been supporting me financially and has been able to support me financially. And like, we're trying to find ways to support ourselves financially with the podcast and find ways to, like, not only support ourselves, but, like, support the artists that interview with us and that find ways to support them. And, like, and so that's something I'm trying to figure out, like, how to support myself with my work. So I don't, my partner does.
Yeah, and that's honestly, I think that's okay. And I think it's important to be honest about it too, because like when you think about labor movements, insofar as like, if you think about artists as like a collective group of workers, artists who are like doing work for free make it hard for anybody to get paid, right? And it like has become, I think the internet is really what made this horribly, terribly bad, because like the internet just like created this system where a certain demographic of people see art as like having no value and something that they're entitled to. And
if few select people can get paid doing that, but it's not open. Like they get sponsorships, they get, like, I'm thinking of TikTok too, where like a few people can get a lot of money by creating, and then the majority of people are getting no compensation for the amount of work they're doing.
Yeah, and that there isn't also any like, I think one thing that always strikes me about artists too is that there is like no guaranteed steady work, and there's no system in place to make sure that there is a safety net for all kinds of things, for food, for shelter, for healthcare. And yeah, so I appreciate that you and other artists who've been on the podcast before are like honest about where you do have privileges, and how you did start to make the connections that you make in the art world, because so like,
yeah, because like in this society, to be able to make art is a privilege. I feel like it shouldn't be, but like it means that you are taken care of, because our society does not take care of artists.
Yeah, and so like I got my bachelor's degree in history, and I think that there is like a parallel probably to be made in a lot of the liberal arts, where it's like, you know, no matter how good you are at what you do, if you don't make the right connections, if you don't know the right people, you aren't going to be able to work in a museum. You're not going to be able to work in an archive. You know, like you can be a high school history teacher.
And you know why? I know why. Because history
they're wealthy.
And because art are powerful, and and it is beneficial to suppress them and to keep them from having power and having a voice, because it would disrupt like the systems that we have. Yeah, right?
And I think a little bit more boring is just that a lot of it is plain old nepotism. What I noticed a lot was my mommy, my daddy, my uncle, my whoever knows someone, and that's how I got my internship. And then that internship turned into a job. And the reality is that like that person didn't have to put in any extra effort, and yet somehow it's treated as though.
And that's like, so true about the art world.
Yeah, and those are the only people that are truly like making a living, right? And then like your only other alternative, if you're not kind of within those circles, is kind of like academia, at least with history, right? Like you kind of either have to turn back into college academia, or you have to work for a nonprofit for very little money. Sometimes you can like volunteer doing stuff. You could be like a high school teacher. We all know how well America pays its teachers. Like it's just really, I see so many interesting parallels in the liberal arts as far as people being compensated for things, like you said, like that I believe have so much value to our society and has so much impact on how we think and how we talk.
And I think there are people that like, who, if you don't have any of those things, like you just have to put so much more like unequally like effort. Because I'm thinking of like interviewing Jose. It's like, it's not that like he necessarily was like well connected, but like he is successful, and it's like because he's putting in so much effort to compensate for
really
that.
Hard. Yeah. I heard that honestly in like a lot of the people that we interviewed as well. Of just like you just have to like basically apply and apply and apply and apply.
Yeah, and I was thinking of Irene too, and she even like was connected and like had to like talk about that, and like that's part of the reason that she like went to Paris for her MFAs, like so that she could create her own connections and not like kind of like create her own outside of her father and his connections. Yeah.
So I mean, like that's like I'm really glad that we're having this conversation, and I'm excited to hear the answers of all kinds of different artists as far as like how they're able to get by, because I don't know.
And like, I want to make sure they don't see it as like a gotcha. It's again, I see this all as like a case study of like, what does what does this look like for everyone?
Absolutely. Exactly. That's really what I care about too. And because the other thing is like, I don't feel like this kind of career advice is very freely given kind of anywhere. And I think that it's so valuable for people to just be able to hear the honest truth about how people get to where they get so that they can make the best decisions for them. Like, you have to be honest about how you got where you got. That's why I'm doing this. I know, you're doing a great job. Like, but yeah, like I just, yeah, I don't know. I don't know why I got all mushy, and I wanted to talk about how great that conversation is. But but yeah, like, I don't know. There's just so much. Our system doesn't make sense. If everybody could just have a basic standard of living,
it makes sense for what it's about. Yeah, like it makes sense for what it's doing. Like it makes sense because the system is working as intended. Yeah, it just doesn't make sense in the grander schemes of things, of humanity.
Yeah, I know.
And progress and life and.
What an interesting. Oh my God. Yeah, like don't get too.
Yeah.
Gathering up all of those special interest thoughts. We're going to file them away for later. That's okay. Okay. It's really hard for me to not info dump terribly about history, and especially like labor movements and stuff. So we already kind of talked about.
And I love that you have that knowledge because I don't have it.
Well, I'm always just worried too, though, because usually I'm like talking from memory, and so I'm like, God, I hope I'm getting these details right. But when I do the transcript, I will let you know if I said anything factually inaccurate, and we'll have like a big.
I know you will.
Thing. Anyway, so we already talked about kind of how your intended audience is like people who pay attention, basically.
Yeah.
Do you have like any clear image of that person, or do you feel like that person really could be anyone? Do you feel like?
Oh yeah, it totally could be anyone. Like, who chooses to come in? Like, I remember seeing some people like looking at it and like they just see these like plates on the wall, like I don't want to see that, and like don't even choose to engage. And so like I think that's part of it too. Like there are people who don't want to take the time to look, and like that is where they are in their life's journey. Like, I don't know, I think that's interesting too. I don't know what the question was anymore.
Oh, the question was just basically like, is there like expanding on like who your intended audience is? I think that's what you did.
Yeah.
And yeah, so I guess like for the people who do engage, right, like who are ready, what like, I know that you hope that they'll kind of like see the broader picture and then look closer, but is there like more that you want them to like feel or think about? Does it kind of depend on like the piece or the series?
And it's like, I don't even know if anyone and I'm too afraid to talk to anyone who goes to my opening, so I don't know. I don't know what their experience is like. I've had like one. I probably have more, but like I remember one person like who saw me out in public, and like, oh, I went to your opening, or I like follow you on Instagram, and so it's like, oh, something happened where like they remember me, and I think I was like looking at their work when they had come out to me or something like that, I definitely feel like my brain's done. Like, motors stopped running.
Yeah, we literally.
But I want to finish what I was saying, so I just might need you to tell me what I was saying again.
Okay, this is our second to last question. Like, we're almost there, and then we'll do the wrap up. We're almost done. But it was just, what messages and feelings do you hope your art inspires in your viewers?
Yeah. Okay. And I guess the question is like, what is the point of asking that question, right? Like, once I put it out there, it's like.
I think it is valuable for you to explain that you feel that way.
Yeah.
Because I get why you feel that way, and that's the answer I expected from you. But I don't think every artist has no hope for what their audience will take away from their work. Like, I think there are definitely artists who are like, well, I made it, and whatever you do with it is yours.
Yeah.
And I don't.
And I guess I'm very aware that like people are probably like not gonna, like, I'm just so used to people not taking what I'm expecting them to take from it that it's like I can't even like predict it or try to have an opinion on it because they're probably not going to get what I'm intending at all. I'm just so used to that. And I also have a lot of times when people like will come up and say something and I'm like, I wish I came up with that. That was great. I'm glad you took that from it. I'm gonna put that one in my pocket.
I'm sorry, I was just like trying to recover because it's a very Carina answer. It's very
good.
Answer.
Good.
But it's also just thinking.
That's all I can give you. That's all I can give you.
I think there's a difference between hoping that someone will take something away from what you did, and then also like genuinely expecting that every single person will actually get that message. Like I think there's a middle ground there, but I understand totally that you do not, and I respect the hell out of it. That's great. I don't need you to go there. So I think we've already kind of like briefly touched on like you do feel like art can disrupt systems of oppression. And for the sake of viewers, like we're talking about white supremacy, patriarchy, capitalism, and ableism when we say systems of oppression. So like, of course, like we've already kind of discussed how like kind of can go either way. It depends on the artist, depends on intent. Do you feel like yours does?
I feel like it both exists within the system, is I almost said affected by the system in the way that like the people that make the most money are probably men, and the people that get the most shows are probably men. And I say probably because like I don't actually know, but like I feel it. And I'm sure there's studies, but I don't have them in my mind, but probably, but yeah. And so like it still exists within the system, but there's like with this podcast and like what we're talking about with COVID and the pandemic, like there's so much freedom to like subvert the system. Like artists already, it's like why I chose to study art, because it let me be myself. It's like there's so much freedom within the art world to be yourself and to do crazy things, and people are just like, oh, it's art. Like, and so like there, anything can be art, and that's what I love about it. And so I do think there's like a lot of opportunity because it has that sort of culture within it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And do you feel like your work is like disruptive, or like do you want it to be? And like I consider this podcast kind of like an example of your disruptive work. Like I don't see you as somebody who's like out there and like, I don't know, gonna pull a carry and like dump pig's blood on someone or something. I don't know, but like but like I don't think that means that you're not resisting.
Yeah. And I've talked about this in a couple of interviews where I started, like when I talked about like the performativeness of art as well. Like I remember in college, like a lot of people, like I think they thought they were making disruptive art, but like but like it still like existed within the system kind of. And so I made this podcast with the intention to like do something disruptive and to like create something outside the system, to find a way to like support other artists and like share the wealth, kind of like the wealth of knowledge.
Try to build a community where people can like find resources and maybe find relationships.
So that was definitely the intention with this. So I hope that it does. Even though I feel like my hopes don't matter, like I'd rather just like find out if it does. And then like I just like I don't know, like and I think like it's cool that I make art with hair that's different, but like tons of people do that, I'm sure. And so like I think what I'm doing with the podcast is more tangible than like, oh, I'm making work with hair. Like I think this is more like an art world, like symbolic kind of thing, but I think this what I'm doing with the podcast is like the more tangible thing.
Awesome. So yeah, that was fun. I feel the last question is like, how can people find you, support your work?
Yeah. All right. You can find me on this podcast every month, the third Monday of every month, we'll be posting a new episode.
Yeah.
You can support us on Patreon, and you can support us monthly that way, and know that you're helping us find ways to give back to artists and find ways to make art sustainable. And
just continue to have these conversations.
Yeah.
And hopefully expand, right? Like how, what we can do with them. I don't know.
Yeah, and you'll be supporting disabled creators as well that struggle to fit into the typical work environment.
Yeah.
That the arts have allowed us to participate.
You guys haven't had much chance to get to know me, but I am not a team player all the time. It's not even on purpose. I'm just rude sometimes.
And then in terms of, if you want to support me as an artist, I really want to start doing photography and commissions, and so hopefully by the time that I don't hold me to it, but hopefully by the time I post this episode, I'll have created a commissions page on my website for photography and art commissions, and that's how you support me.
I'll bother her in her Instagram DMs, and she'll get back. I'll bother her about it.
And follow me on Instagram, and leave comments on things and engage on our work and ask us questions and connect with us. I think that would be super supportive as well. And then my Instagram is Carina H Artist, and my TikTok is Creepina with 2 A's, and my website is carinahiscock.com, and our podcast website is reclaimingrepresentation.com, and we're on YouTube.
Links to all this stuff in whatever description box you're looking at, for sure.
And the point of this is I want it to be as accessible as possible. So if you like watching things on YouTube, subscribe to that. If you like listening to podcasts, subscribe to that. If you just want to engage with us on Instagram, or you want to do find what works for you.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, any amount of support is we get embarrassingly excited about the little things. So anybody who just wants to comment, or if you have suggestions for who you might want to see on the show, or somebody who might be interested in talking to us, we have there's a whole page on the website about it. So I don't know. I don't know how to wrap this up because I'm not a professional podcast host, but I hope that I have not been impossible to watch, nor have I been too entertaining. Please, God. Please.
Leave a comment and let us know how Hailey did as an interviewer. Oh, actually, don't do that. I think
you could.
Yeah, I think that's the one thing you don't want. Only if it's positive. No critiques. Just support.
It's okay to critique. It's okay to critique me, but just know that I don't imagine myself coming back as
Let us know if you want her back.
You could ask.
So Reclaiming Representation is hosted by me, Carina, and was created in collaboration with Hailey Wang. And our theme music was created by Wish. I edit our video and podcast, and follow us on Instagram at reclaiming.representation for additional content, and learn more about the series and how to support us at reclaimingrepresentation.com. You can also find podcast transcripts as well on the website.
Nice.
Promise that we'll have a better outro next time.
Yeah, we're working on it. We are a work in progress, baby.